Hello and welcome to another Katz & Co video. I'm Martin Katz. I'm based here in the Isle of Man, where I've been helping clients from all over the world to set up Isle of Man companies and trusts for more than 30 years. Today I'm going to be digging into the technical detail of a question that I've heard from UK clients over and over again. And the gist of it is, if I put my assets or income into an Isle of Man company, can I forget about UK tax? Sounds tempting, of course, but is it a fact or is it just hopeful fiction? Well, in this short video, I'm going to try and separate the fact from the fiction and explain when offshore companies can help to reduce your tax exposure and when and why they can't. So if you're in the UK and you're considering an offshore structure, then pay attention. Good planning is not really optional because the HMRC penalties for making a mistake can be eye-watering. So let's start by defining the question, because this is a key question as it's the one that I'm most commonly asked by people calling me from the UK when they want to set up an Isle of Man company. So normally it goes something like this. A UK entrepreneur calls me and says that they'd like to set up an Isle of Man zero tax company to bill their clients from because they don't like the ridiculous tax rates in the UK, which are far too high. Agreed. Of course, they say that they will declare any dividends that they take out of the Isle of Man company to HMRC, and they're happy to pay tax on them. But what they really want is for the remaining profit, which stays in the Isle of Man, to be tax-free. So let me just say, this is not a stupid question. Each statement is actually quite logical, and overall, I think it seems quite reasonable. But there is a lot of misinformation surrounding it, which does confuse things further. All you have to do is take a quick look on Reddit, and you will find it there. So let's try and separate some of the facts from the fiction. So 0% corporation tax in the Isle of Man for companies, that is a fact. No capital gains tax in the Isle of Man for companies, also a fact, actually not for people either. And a nice friendly regulatory environment that is quite friendly towards international entrepreneurs. Well, that's pretty much true as well. We are quite a friendly bunch here in the Isle of Man. So where are the problems then? Well, unfortunately, the reality is a lot more complicated than just setting up an overseas Isle of Man company. And this is because the UK has enacted anti-tax avoidance rules, which are designed to prevent their residents from the benefit of using low tax companies while they remain in the UK. So if you are a UK resident, these are the rules that are aimed squarely at you. So the short answer to the question that I posed in the title of the video is as follows. If you are a UK resident, and I'm excluding new residents from that, then there's almost no situation where setting up an Isle of Man or any other zero tax company is legitimately going to benefit you. Now, if you're interested in the detail of why that is the case and you're from the UK, then listen on. So the first bit of anti-tax avoidance legislation in the UK is called the Central Management and Control Test. And what it basically says is if a company is controlled by a person in the UK, say something like the board meetings happen there, or somebody's controlling the bank account, or contracts are entered into on behalf of the company by a UK resident, then that will make the Isle of Man company UK tax resident, regardless of the fact that it is an Isle of Man company. And in that case, the company will be subject to UK corporation tax, and so there is no point in having an Isle of Man company. That's the first rule. The second part is you might say, well, if you can deal with the central management and control issue, maybe you can travel to the Isle of Man to hold board meetings, or maybe you can appoint Isle of Man people as resident directors, then will that work? And the answer is no. There are some nasty deemed income provisions that you will need to contend with, and they're known as the Transfer of Assets Abroad rules, and they're contained within Section 720 of the Income Tax Act 2007. They are pretty complicated, so I'm not going to go into the detail, But the essence of them is that if a UK resident sets up an offshore stroke Isle of Man company and the company earns income, but the UK person can still benefit from it, let's say, for example, they might be a shareholder, then HMRC can tax the individual as if they received the income directly. So note that you don't need to receive a payment from the Isle of Man company to have a tax liability, and that's why they're called the deemed income provisions. So I put detail. There's a blog article which in the description, link to a blog article in the description, which describes both of those two bits of anti-avoidance rules. The third part relates to capital gains. Because you may think, oh, okay, well, can we use an Isle of Man company for some nice CGT deferral? And you're probably getting the gist by now, but the answer is no. Section 3 of the Taxation of Chargeable Gains Act 1992 actually attributes gains from a closely held non-resident company to UK resident shareholders. So if you're a UK resident with a significant interest in an Isle of Man company which realises a gain, then this will deem the gain onto you and you will pay tax personally on that gain. So when can we use Isle of Man companies is a reasonable question. And the answer is if you had a virtual business that doesn't rely on a UK permanent establishment, so there's no place of business in the UK, and if you are prepared to leave the UK, maybe you could go to Dubai or Malta or Cyprus or indeed even the Isle of Man, but don't forget to bring your coat, then an Isle of Man company or another offshore company can work for you to reduce your tax bill. So I spend a lot of time helping people, for example, move to the Isle of Man. So if you are a non-resident or if you want to think about moving to the Isle of Man, then and there's any part of this video that you would like to discuss, then feel free to contact me. So the bottom line, fact or fiction, can you avoid UK tax using an offshore company? Well, the answer is no, not really if you're remaining as a UK resident person, but if you're prepared to move or you live outside the UK in a tax-friendly jurisdiction, then quite possibly the answer is yes. So feel free to contact me to discuss further on either on WhatsApp or you can find the website details below. I hope that was helpful for you. So until next time, goodbye.